Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, dear Salomon. Just some introductory words. First of all, to thank all the organizers, all those that you see in the banner. So, Republicans Overseas, for sure, the WFI Institute, and especially Randy, because Randy, this is very much your baby. You raised it very much on your own. And so the final result is very amazing, and I think everyone is extremely satisfied with this first and certainly not last World Freedom Initiative. So congratulations, Randy. Something else I wanted to tell you before we start and we jump into the topic of migration is that let me remind you, me as a Spanish citizen, that in my countries right now, there is a coup d'etat going on. There's no more rule of law since yesterday. No one wishes to speak about it, but it's definitely the case. And what makes me extremely upset is that all these rule of law ayatollahs in the European Parliament, those who, for example, kicked out 180,000 Hungarian students from the Erasmus program, in the name of the rule of law, those are the same persons who now are keeping their mouths totally shut. Please don't forget it. And also speaking about migration, it's fascinating because today we're going to speak about it not only with the CEO of the Republicans Overseas and basically the father of the Republicans Overseas, not only with the Oregon Republican National Committeeman, but we're going to speak about it with a real legal migrant, with somebody who is basically the American dream, somebody who came to the US, I guess you were around 20 or something like that.
20, yeah.
And since the moment you arrived, you integrated and you had a life that is not even a successful career, but it's closer to a fairy tale. And so that's why, Mr. Yu, dear Salomon, it's really a pleasure to speak about migration with you. And also, I wanted to tell you that migration is one of the classical elephants in the room.
That's correct.
No one really wants to speak about it, except in conservative conferences. And certainly we're going to do it here without 1 inch of cancel culture, without biting our tongues and really speaking the truth. And starting with that, I wanted to say that I'm very happy now that I'm living in a country called Hungary and in a city called Budapest, where, 2 days ago, somebody tried to organize one small, single pro-Palestina demonstration, and it was prohibited because in Hungary you cannot praise terrorism. And I am indeed very happy and grateful to live in a country where wearing a kippah doesn't turn you into a walking target. And I'm not sure this is the case here in France, for example. It is certainly the case in Hungary. So no matter how much, crap you get from the European Parliament telling you that Hungary is an anti-Semitic country, as we learned today, we live in Orwellian times, and basically the total opposite is the absolute truth. There is one country today in the European Union where Jews and Jewish people can feel absolutely safe. This is Hungary. So let's not forget that neither. Dear Salomon, please tell us first a bit about yourself, because if I would be like a leftist journalist, I will tell you, Salomon, but you're a migrant yourself. Why are you against migration? That will be like the tricky and stupid question that will come on the table. And so that's why, because we also need to have the feeling that we know how some journalists can behave. This is my first question for you.
Thank you. As an immigrant, legal immigrant, and grow up in communist China under tyranny, you learn and appreciate the rule of law. And without rule of law, you can see the kind of political persecution, cancel culture happening in America and in the West. And for that reason, when I came to this country in 1980, I only knew thank you and Coca-Cola. So it was so important to me to learn the English language and also to simulate in American society and to be successful. And for that reason, it's more like you have to pay back what America did for me. And for that reason, if we don't enforce immigration laws and stop illegal aliens' invasion of USA, we're all doomed. And I have no place to go. I found my freedom, and I have no place to go. That's why I'm fighting.
And what is the situation now? Because we, in the last 30, 40, 50 years, we always had the impression that migration was better controlled on your side of the pond than on our side of the pond. But it seems that now with the Biden administration, this might have changed, and it's true that what I hear from the US looks very much and sounds very much like what we have in Europe already. What is your diagnosis on that?
I think the deal done by my favorite president, Ronald Reagan. Because of him, I became a Republican. Remember, he's bring down Soviet Union, USSR, and stop communism advancing, and so I become a Republican. But during his 8 years, you guys remember Reagan amnesty. Probably 3 million illegals got in under Reagan amnesty. So in everybody's mind, if there is a Reagan amnesty, especially in those minds of all the illegal aliens, America will grant us another amnesty. For that reason, when they saw Biden came into office, I call Beijing Biden. The reason I call Beijing Biden, you all know, he took money from CCP China. And now we can document that, and we have canceled checks to prove that. Now, so under Biden administration, and we had right now 8 million illegal aliens already come into America, and they are here. And they expect we will grant them amnesty again. By the way, when they come to this country, they bring lawless. They bring that garbage to this country, to America. And so we need to come up with solutions to deal with this. So we can talk about that next.
Exactly. One of the problems in the European Union is they have difficulties controlling their borders. And why? Because for decades already, the Geneva Convention, and so the legal figure of asylum is basically used as a Trojan horse. You can file as fraudulent asylum requests, and then once you're in, it's almost impossible to get out. And is it the same situation now that you're facing in the US?
Well, in US, the problem right now is, one, current administration, Beijing Biden administration is not enforcing immigration laws on the book. Good example is Trump had an immigration law called Mexico waiting. Mexico waiting concept is that you have illegal aliens coming through, and Trump made a deal with Mexico government. Basically tell them, you give us 13,000 troops to enforce the border. If you don't, guess what? There will be tariffs on products from Mexico. So they did. Everybody said, you're not going to get that, right? But they realized tariffs on Mexico imports will kill their economy. So they provide 13,000 troops to enforce the border for us. Then what he did was he make all the illegal aliens waiting for political asylum on the other side border. Now, they took him to U.S. Supreme Court, all the way to U.S. Supreme Court. Guess what? Supreme Court decided. Supreme Court actually decided in his favor. And it's legal for those illegal aliens to wait in Mexico to be processed for asylum. And with that in mind, guess what Beijing Biden did? Not only refused to build additional wall, Trump didn't finish his wall. And on top of that, cut the wires allow illegal to come through. Then there is another effort. Okay, when you talk about EU, you talk about globalists. And guess who is funding those illegal aliens caravans? Soros. Now, you can find globalists' money everywhere in EU government. And we heard EU president is elected by leftists and German money. And so when you see this, we're not talking about conspiracy. We're talking about use illegal aliens to destroy our civilization, our heritage, our culture. That's what you see right now.
Yeah, that's a very important point, and this is really one that is now like really on the top of the political agenda in a lot of European countries, starting with France. Starting with France. When we speak about migration, what resonates is security, and we will speak about it, but it's also like the cultural impact that massive flows of unintegrated migrants indeed to a cultural change. How do you see that in the US? Because everyone says that the US is a country of migrants anyway, but still, there was a melting pot. And still, they were integrating to a specific culture. Is it still the case, Solomon?
No. The concept of melting pot, when I came to America, 1980, is that you got to simulation is so important to be part of the culture. But under current environment, what I call multiculturalism, that's wokeness. And basically, US culture is bad. Freedom is bad. Capitalism is bad. And anything we believe, traditional values, Christianity, all bad. What we have to do is destroy them and accept other society values and standards. First of all, we pay a price on lawlessness.
Let me tell you an anecdote. When I was working in the European Commission, I was in the cabinet, so in the private staff of a commissioner. We had a little talk once, like private type of VIP, with a Dutch sociologist who was in one of the refugee welcome committees, and he told me something that I would never forget. He said that, you know, in Amsterdam we shouldn't teach Dutch culture anymore to the newcomers. You know why? Because in Amsterdam, only 1/3 of the youngsters under 15 are of Dutch origin. So actually what we should teach to the newcomers are actually the values and the culture of the migrants who are now the majority in Amsterdam. Did it go that bad? And this is actually the case in the Netherlands, in France. You can also see Belgium, of course, in Western Europe, everywhere in Western Europe. Sweden, certainly. For example, in Central Europe, where I live, in Hungary, is absolutely not the case. Where does the US stand now? Do you see that now, like this capacity now to really disrupt
absolutely
the migrant culture?
Under Obama administration, we took in refugees from Muslim countries. And today, those refugees settle in Michigan area. Guess what? They got their own congresswoman just got censured. You remember Marcel talked about the congresswoman talking about openly free Palestine from a river to the sea, basically eliminate Israel. And so if that is not the kind of things we want to accept, and that creating national security implication for us, not just eliminating Israel. And one of the issues we just learned from Hamas and Israel war is that we had a PLO spokeswoman. Trump closed down PLO office in Washington, D.C., and labeled it as terrorist organization. Guess what she got? She got a job with immigration service as an asylum officer. So now she actually posting and genocidal pictures against supporters of Israel like me and calling for genocide against the Jews. And Beijing Biden didn't fire her. Now, as a political asylum officer, do I trust her to do the good job, keep those jihadists out? No. So this really become a national security issue for Americans.
And maybe, and sadly, this is something on which you can learn from the bad examples in Europe, because jihadism has been going on, as far as I remember, in France since 95.
Right.
95. So it has been 30 years of jihadism since the attacks in the Métro Saint-Michel. And it has only been growing and growing and growing and spreading and spreading. And then came Paris, came Madrid, came Berlin, came Strasbourg, came Brussels, of course. And it's true that something that is that I find absolutely appalling is that, is exactly like the cultural influence that the jihadism is now, having, not only in your country, but especially among your elites. And I think here we need to also speak about another elephant in the room, which is like the open and totally, let's say, spontaneous, harsh anti-Semitism in the US. I never ever saw it before. And when I see, for example, those students in Harvard, in Ivy League universities, like speaking exactly like some people spoke in Europe in the 30s, it really shivers down my spine. What is the situation, Solomon, please?
I think it had a lot to do with today's education system. And it had been dumbing down the values. Karen McChriston, daughter Vivian there, is a homeschooler because she refused let public school to brainwash her kid. And then you see the kind of funding for Harvard, for Ivy Leagues in the States. They are the one under multiculturalism, under free speech, allow students and Palestinian students to demonstrate against our value and calling for killing the Jews. And you can see also in front of Sydney Opera House, those demonstrators actually chanting, gas the Jews. I mean, they're calling for second genocide openly. And what did the Australian government do? Nothing, okay? So that's what we're facing right now, worldwide. And so from that perspective, I really appreciate what President Trump said lately. He said, you know what I would do for those universities, allow this kind of situation going on, he is going to take their federal grants away from them. And the other thing is very, very important for him. When he gets elected again, he will cancel those student visas and send them back home. And that's what we have to do. There is no other way around to deal with this kind of situation.
And maybe not to grant citizenship so easily. I know in the US it's a bit more complicated, but here it seems that in many countries in Europe, to obtain citizenship is basically like a small, tiny bureaucratic process. No one is going even to ask you one day, but by the way, do you love the country where you want to get the citizenship from? Not even that, and basically they send your passport through mail. In your country, it's a bit less the case, but do you think that will be part of the solution? And also another question, Solomon, is like, let's speak about solutions. What about returning irregular migrants? Is it possible? Why not? What would you suggest?
Yes, the answer is yes. I am going to shock you guys and by using the word deportation. Thank you. End of January next year, there will be a RNC resolution. and I will be the author and chief sponsor for that resolution. Basically deal with this issue called deportation. The concept is, one, you got to enforce existing immigration laws on the book, including Trump's Mexico policy. And two, we really, really need vetting process. You can't allow PLA spokesman or former spokesman to be our political asylum officer for immigration's naturalization service. And on top of it, when I came to this country, there was a policy, okay? It's not law, it's not federal law. The policy is called deputizing local cops, city police officers, and county deputy sheriffs to perform immigration responsibility as well. And it was very simple then. If you pull somebody over for routine traffic violations, and if that person is on the deportation list, you arrest them, you hold them, and for immigration agents to pick them up and then send them away. And the other thing is that, sadly, 99% immigrants, illegal immigrants, came through our border, got released. And even though they apply for political asylum, they never come back for court hearing, for federal court hearing. And there is a law on the book. An illegal alien not coming back for a court hearing, and judge could order immediate deportation. Then that person will be on the deportation list. So the problem is when I enforce that, and because nobody wants to upset. In Europe, I was in Greece, gave a talk. Afterwards, somebody told me I call them illegal aliens. That's politically incorrect. If I were a legislator, gave that speech, I could be arrested next day. So
you have to say irregular.
No, I call them illegal aliens, okay? And because words mean things, and there is no way we should sugarcoat this kind of stuff. So what you're going to do is put them on the deportation list and ask a judge to order deportation order. And then cops will be able to do their job. So the thing I'm going to propose as a resolution is that introduce a federal legislation. The kind of legislation, instead of deputizing city cops or county sheriff deputies, and you just grant them authority to arrest illegal aliens during routine traffic violation and during, arrest them for petty crimes, then check their records. If they are on our deportation list, you hold them, then they call immigration, and you deport them. Usually that applies to the entire family now. So the disconnect, what I saw in America really is, you got those laws on the books, but not enforce them on one hand, on the other hand, even they got on deportation list, you can't catch them. So when you start doing the right thing, lastly, very important, we must elect Donald Trump for president in 2024.
But Solomon, what about third countries? The big problem we have here in Europe about forced returns is that sometimes their countries of origin says, no, we won't bother taking them back. by the way, you have to prove they are citizens and they don't have a passport anymore. So there is a blatant and very bad faith, a lack of cooperation from a lot, for example, of African countries.
I have a solution for you.
You have a solution for that? That was my
called
question.
Trump's solution. I remember a case, okay, and somebody decided not to take back some country. And Trump's solution was, I'm going to tariff your products. I'm going to sink your economy. It will work.
It worked with Mexico.
Exactly. It worked with Mexico. So until you have a president, a politician, stands for principle. For principle means standing for our rule of law. Otherwise, we are all doomed. And in my case, I have no place to go.
Now, that's very important. Where else can we go?
Yeah.
Well, Hungary, Solomon, Hungary.
No.
I have still one question for you, but I'm going also to tell you that we will have a little bit of time also to take your questions from the
Absolutely.
audience. So get ready, because the next one will be yours. Wokeism and migration, there is a link. For example, in France, this is a country where you have citizens of French citizenship of Algerian origin, for example, and this is a country where their parents or even their grandparents were born, and still they hate this country. So they hate the country where the parents were born, not least because they are taught to hate him because, of decolonialism, because of wokeism and grievance and victimization and stuff. This is creating like a social bomb in France, because when you have like 200,000 or 300,000 youngsters who hate you, hate the country where they were born or their parents were born, this is a total recipe for disaster. And by the way, this is also one of the sources of anti-Semitism, of Muslim-fueled anti-Semitism. What is the situation in the US? You mentioned it before that, yes, sometimes migrants, in order to really destroy the Western societies and the Western culture, are basically used like cultural weapons against the host societies. Is it the case?
Wokeism in America is a weapon. And we reach a point, when I came to America in 1980, and you don't see this kind of stuff. Today, first you see political correctness. They try to shut you down and take away our First Amendment rights. Free speech, that's where they were. And now, eventually go to cancel culture. If guys like me speak up, I do a lot. And they're going to take your mortgage away, they're going to take your jobs. And so that's how they're going to silence you. Now, it's even getting worse. They will call you fascists. Okay? If you don't agree with their policies, and wokeness is a good example, they call you fascists. So yes, it's getting worse. I always tell people, it reminds me of Cultural Revolution.
So very much so.
I grew up, survived Mao's Cultural Revolution, and escaped, found freedom. And when I look back, I said, gee, I have to fight this battle all over again. So
that's very relevant what you said. If I try to look for a historical precedent of wokeism, I go straight to the Mao's Cultural Revolution,
yeah.
where the youngsters were even like targeting the oldest communists.
Absolutely.
They had this culture of tabula rasa, we start from ground zero, we know better than anyone else, and then also this culture of public excuses that people have now to do on Twitter, on Facebook. I'm so sorry if I offended anyone, it will never happen again, and still they end up losing their jobs anyway. So don't apologize. Never apologize.
Never apologize. He's right on that. If they see you apologize, they smell your blood, and they come for you. By the way, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm vicious. I call Joe Biden, Beijing Biden, and have you heard Hamas Harris? You know why I call her Hamas Harris? Now, as White House initiative, and she is talking about we have to deal with Islamophobia. Muslims not attacked by our citizens in America. Nobody hate them. To the contrary, Jews got attacked, and in Paris, Jews got stabbed. Swastika was painted on the door.
And even in the worst case scenario, Jews were killed in their supermarkets, in their schools, and in their museums.
That's
in
correct.
both France and Belgium.
Yeah.
This is anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Not to speak badly about Soros.
Yeah.
Certainly not. Thank you. We're going to take maybe some questions from the floor. Gentlemen, please.
Solomon, it's John. One question I have for the asylum issue, everybody crossing over from the Mexican border right now is claiming asylum. Under the law, they have the burden of proof to prove that they have a credible fear of persecution in the place they come from. My question is, why don't we put 5,000 immigration judges on the border? These are easy cases to deal with. They can't prove it and send them back immediately. Again, the answer is it's a question of will, but there are solutions under the existing law.
Absolutely, but you got a Joe Biden in office, and Hamas Harris want us to deal with Islamic phobia. That's the problem.
By the way, Islamophobia, which is a concept totally coined and pushed by the Muslim Brotherhood very successfully in Europe. In Europe, you have Islamophobia days. In the European institutions, you have a special coordinator for Islamophobia. And at the end, it's a way to prevent anyone to criticize political Islam. A big mistake. Maybe more questions from the room? Madam, please. Just to repeat the questions, what about the cartels? Will we be able to treat them as terrorist organizations?
I think we should. And the problem is it's a will. Also, you talk about sex trafficking, drug trafficking, and they are breaking all the laws on our book. Another thing is they are actually commit the kind of crime should be persecuted under statute and went up persecuting them. We'll catch them, we release them. That's a problem.
Yeah, and this is about human trafficking, which is a plague. And again, let me remind you that there is this wonderful movie that was so much criticized by the left, hence is an excellent one, Sound of Freedom, who basically tells you exactly what human trafficking is about and what sexual exploitation of children is. And it's very telling that a part of the woke left is not very keen on watching this movie because they're not very keen on fighting sexual exploitation. Let's not ask why. If we don't have further questions from the room, you have still 3 seconds to raise your hand. And if not, I just wanted to thank you, Salomon, for this great talk.
Thank you. Appreciate that.